Thank you everyone for joining the 2024 first Patch My PC webinar. This time we have the Ask Us Anything with the Patch My PC team. And we will be taking questions. We have taken questions online when you registered for the event as well. Questions will be reviewed and answered in the Q&A in Microsoft Teams here, as well as chat. But to get us started off here, I think that we can start introducing several other people here, engineers, and more of the Patch My PC team that will help be conducting this webinar. Andrew, you want to get us started?
Sure. My name is Andrew Jimenez. I run the app catalog team here at Patch My PC. I've been here for just over 4 years. Next. Anyone? Brian.
Bueller.
Not Brian. Jordan.
Fine. My name's Brian Dam. I'm a part of the engineering team here. My official title is Patch Lover Extraordinaire. I'm here to take your guys' questions. Jordan?
I am Jordan Menzing. I am the security engineering manager here at Patch My PC. I've been here for almost 3 years. In a few more weeks, it'll be 3 years. Actually, a week and a half, I guess. And I'm here to help answer questions around security and other fun things. Next volunteer. Adam, you're off mute, so you look like a good candidate.
Yeah, my name's Adam Cook. I'm a customer engineer at Patch My PC. Yeah, that's me. Ben, you're next. You look like a good candidate.
Thank you, Adam. Candidate number 1. My name's Ben. I work in customer engineering here at Patch My PC. I think back to you, Corey.
All right, well, let's get this started. First question we have from the registrations, predetermined questions that came in.
We didn't introduce John. Hold on.
Oh, he disappeared off my screen.
DJM, we have DJM here now. We also have some other people as well, and once they come on, we have questions that designated for them that we can introduce them as they come up. We also have DGM here.
I'm David James, VP Engineering here. Yeah.
All right, let's get this started. First question, Andrew.
Hello. So this question, I've noticed more software vendors using open source GPL products at the core of their software. Do you support such products? E.g. GhostScript, does it impact vendor software integrity when patching in your experience? In my experience, it does not. You should always vet your open source software projects that you use in your in the core of your software. But there are so many industries that run almost entirely off open source software. So it's a core part of many businesses. GhostScript is actually not a great example for this. We do support such products. GhostScript actually removed their silent installer, so we've had to remove that from our catalog. But yes, we do support those. We add them all the time. Usually they're very open to feedback as well. I've submitted when we've had apps in our catalog that were GPL that have had issues, I've been able to submit feedback to them and actually get them fixed so that they'd work in Patch My PC. So usually they're very accommodating for that kind of thing, and usually they work well enough.
Next question up, Andrew again.
It's me again. Is it possible to include applications that are not currently in the repository? What is the procedure? How long does that take? Is it possible to add applications yourself? We have our custom apps feature in public preview right now. I'm not going to go through the whole setup because we don't have time. But what I will do is, let me grab the docs. You can set up custom apps right now if you have, I believe it's Enterprise Plus or higher license, and there's the docs for it. So yes, you can add your own applications now. We have a feature public preview for custom apps. We'd love for more people to try it so that we can get feedback on it before we push it out to GA.
Cody, we have a next question up for you.
A way to access PatchMyPC software that isn't on the SCCM server with the client. So right now, generally no, but we are actively working on this in terms of being able to remotely manage. But there's a couple of steps we have to go through to get there. Yeah, we're splitting the front end and back end up a little bit more for the publisher. So work in progress, absolutely. Currently, no.
Andrew again.
Oh, look, it's me. Does PatchMyPC download third-party updates to a central location for deployment? So this depends on which you're using. If you're using Config Manager, yes, you're basically downloading the updates just like you would for WSUS, and they all get downloaded centrally on your Config Manager server, distributed to your distribution points, and deployed out. For Intune, technically, I guess it's a central location, but that central location is the internet. You package things up in Intune Win, and they go up to Intune as an application. So you're getting it from the cloud at that point. So yes and no, kind of. But so I guess the big thing to say there is the endpoints themselves don't download directly from the vendors. The publisher downloads from the vendor and then uploads it to whichever solution you're using.
Thank you. Jordan.
Yeah, so how to protect your system to ensure your clients aren't affected by a supply chain attack like what happened with SolarWinds. So we have an actually pretty in-depth article that covers a lot of the different components of all the different checks that we do along the way for how we validate from both a product perspective, as well as not just from a product of like what we ship, the publisher and the software that we ship, but also like how do we try to validate that one of the other vendors that we are supporting tries to minimize it. We have a full in-depth article on this. I'm going to grab the link for that here, and I will share it in the chat on this. But more or less, the end of the day, we have a multi-step process where multiple people are required to approve builds and to approve releases along the way. We also don't just use our eyes in order to check it. We also have some automated testing and repeat validation of things along the way to help validate that things that shouldn't end up in there don't end up in there. Here's the link on how we do the deep dive validation for this. We also unless somebody else beat me to it. Nope. The other thing that we do is we do leverage hash validation of all of the content that gets downloaded from the vendors. So our product downloads the content direct from the vendor's website, and then we validate against a hash list that we provide of that is signed using what's called a physical EV token. That means that in order to do something like that, you'd have to find a way to compromise the physical EV token signing of that. And if the catalog is not signed by one of those physical EV tokens, it just throws the catalog away and it won't use it, and it doesn't complete the hash matching for it.
Yeah, and let me add to what Jordan says. In order for us, we take this very seriously. This is one of our core reasons for existence at PatchMyPC is to deliver patches quickly and securely, and our design is the smallest path possible to get it from the vendor website to your clients, right? So the design intentionally, for many cases, we don't store the content on PatchMyPC assets. We're downloading it from your environment or to your environment directly from the vendor website and then directly into either Config Manager or Intune. But yeah, the article that Jordan posted, if you have security folks that really want to understand it, goes into a lot of detail on how this works.
And in the interest of transparency, if your security team has in-depth questions about that, do feel free to reach out, because we do have some other things that we just don't have them unless you're actively looking in towards being a customer, that we're happy to talk through and walk through some of those details, especially for just stuff for where you're looking for compliance perspective. So feel free to reach out to the security team. We actually have a form you can fill out on our website, and we'll be happy to set up a meeting to chat with you.
All right. Andrew.
My favorite question ever. Will PatchMyPC have any integration with driver and BIOS management in Intune, potentially for reporting, etc.? Microsoft has a great solution for this now, and I'm really hopeful for their solution because drivers is not something I want to do. I'm not going to say we'll never do drivers, but I think we're really focusing on third-party apps at this moment, and we'll keep an eye on drivers for the future. That's all I have, unless DJ has something and wants to put words in my mouth.
No, I think that Microsoft has made some interesting progress here in the last 12 months that if you haven't looked at already, I would encourage you to look at. And especially with the granularity that lets you do drivers from the cloud while doing other things like feature updates or quality updates from ConfigMan or WSUS. I think it's a huge step in that. The other thing I would say is we have with Advanced Insights the ability to see what patches you might be missing or might be old, and that's a huge leap forward. Brian, I don't know if you want to talk more about the device patching or device driver patch from the cloud, or John, if you want to talk about Advanced Insights and the driver reporting in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to the question was there's some links in there to Microsoft talking about it. It is part of the Windows Update for Business deployment solution. Yeah. And they're rolling that out within Intune. That should be GA right now. So it's not for, to be clear, it's not for Config Manager customers. But the big problem for us, and the thing that Microsoft has that we do not, is 1.5 billion devices in a catalog. And so they have this beautiful catalog, and they are starting to put enough enterprise control around it to allow enterprises to start deploying those drivers in the ways they need to. They have a ways to go, but that catalog, that like 1.5 billion driver catalog is that's the big hang up. That's why Andrew doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But someday, if we have to, I guess we will. John,
yeah, and just to yeah, I was just going to say we have some basic features in Advanced Insights where if the vendor is publishing updates into the driver updates rather into the Microsoft Update catalog, then we can bring reporting back into Advanced Insights to give you at least visibility of where there are driver updates available in MU that you could deploy. But it is then incumbent on you to actually go off and do the work to package those drivers up and get them pushed out to the infrastructure.
All right. Next up, DGEM. Any upcoming features to keep an eye out for? Imagine there might be one.
Well, just from roadmap point of view, I'll mention a few. We have custom apps right now. It's in public preview. It will be coming full GA in February. We have Intune Cloud or SaaS, basically, and that was in chat. Someone was asking how's our integration with Patch My PC. So we're starting that in private preview. So that's a solution where you can use, with no on-prem infrastructure, you can manage applications and updates for applications in just the cloud. That is starting private preview and coming this quarter, probably public preview, depending on how our first batch of customers go with it. We have some MSP functionality coming in the first half of this year. We have John and his team are working on the next iteration of Advanced Insights. We just did a release that he calls Advanced Insights 2.0 with some leaps in functionality and implementation that's much better, but also looking at what that would look like for an Intune solution. So I know many people on Intune struggle with some of the reporting gaps versus ConfigMan. So we believe that what we're bringing for Advanced Insights for Intune will really help a lot of those customers. We have something we haven't talked about publicly, and so I'm just going to leave a teaser, which is a application on the phone and in the web that is designed for CISOs to give them a lot more information about their real estate around CVEs and vulnerabilities. And we think that's going to be really interesting. Look forward to some webinars for us to talk about that sometime later this year. Someone asked about Mac. Mac is something that we're looking at. So that's some of the big pieces, just a small set of functionality that off the top of my head I can think of that we could talk about. I miss anything, John or Brian, that's interesting to pipe up on?
No, I thought that was good.
Next one up, Andrew or DGM?
So this is can Intune apps and Config Manager apps list be incorporated into a single cloud-based portal that we currently use for custom Intune app? Well, that's exactly the plan, I believe. So the custom apps is our first step into building that entire cloud experience. A way to get our feet wet, get the solution up and running. From there, we'll start working on building out our catalog in that cloud, and from there, then we'll. I don't know how far I can go into this, but I'm thinking then we'll do Intune and then eventually Config Manager from that one portal.
Right. Go ahead again.
Yes. Can you explain the update approval process in Patch My PC, especially for critical security updates? I imagine that this has to do with how we go through critical security updates. I'm not quite sure, honestly. So there's the process that we went through that Jordan mentioned earlier about how we validate applications before we put them in our catalog. But update approval can also be like through ADRs or deployments in Config Manager. Actually, so I don't know how much further I can skip. I can do this one. Feel free to ask in the chat and clarify that one.
I can add some additional like pieces here, I guess, right? From the security perspective earlier, right? If your goal here is to kind of understand like how do we approve them internally? Well, first things first is they have to come out. Once they come out, we have built numerous things for monitoring them that brings them in. And pretty much from the moment that we get alerted about them, we start working on them. We typically release the catalog. I think we're actually averaging like 2 releases a day now, aren't we, Andrew?
2 or 3. Yeah,
2 or 3 releases a day. It used to be that we released our catalog about once a day. So now we've hit a frequency where we're releasing our catalog 2 to 3 times a day on average. So when that update comes out, we have to get notified of it. We bring it in, we test it. We then have some automated testing that we run it through, as well as some security validation that we run it through. We then have a process by which a 2-key approval process to actually submit it. And that is the timeline effectively in terms of what the approval process is for that along the way, in terms of like how we get it out the door from that perspective. That's kind of covered. A lot of that is covered in that article that we linked earlier on, but there's not really like an approval process in terms of like, should we include this or should we not include this in the catalog? It's if it is released and we evaluate it, unless we find a problem with it along the way in that testing, it's going to go out the door as long as it checks everything and passes all the validations along the way. If there's a quality issue along the way, I mean, we're always quality driven, right? If we find a quality problem with a security update or something like that, where, oh, this security update is super critical, but hey, by the way, it blue screens your machines, we're probably not going to ship it. Now, we may post an alert about it inside of some form of communication, right? Or we may craft a response to tell people why we haven't ahead of time for it. Does that help add some clarity to that, Andrew? Or other people in the chat, if you have other questions about it, I guess, or depth on it?
Andrew.
I'm popular. Can I set up Patch My PC applications so that they are available in Software Center for voluntary initial install, but get patched mandatorily if installed? I'm going to take this because it said Software Center from the Config Manager point of view. Absolutely, yeah. And then Jordan, if Jordan wants to talk about ADRs, but our Config Manager apps are totally designed to be pushed out through Software Center as available. Once someone installs them, our updates through WSUS will pick those up. So they have applicability rules that look at the applications that are installed on the device. And so if a new app gets installed manually via available, then the updates through WSUS will pick them up. Intune apps and Intune updates work very similarly. The Intune apps will just install wherever they go. So you can either push them required or available. Once they're installed, the Intune updates have a requirement rule on them. That's a PowerShell script that looks for a previous version of the software and will install if it finds that previous version. So either one of those those ways will update applications that are available. We did design for that in mind because that's a really nice way to manage your software, where you don't have to go out and like manually choose where every piece of software goes. If you just let your users pick what software they want at Software Center, then we can update it.
And as for, I guess, the ADR component, you can absolutely forcibly install the updates via an ADR. ADRs allow you now to either do updates either automatically and enforced using requirements, or you can do them as available. You can actually do them as available now too for updates in order to install them as well, in terms of making them get updates once the software is installed. Sorry, DJ, you were going to say something.
No, go ahead. I was just going to hijack a couple questions from chat. So, but are Jordan and Andrew, you guys done with this one? Okay, so there was a question about air gap, and there was a couple people in chat. Air gap can get really complex really fast. So the two people asking about air gap, if it's okay, can you email Jordan at Patch My PC, and he and I will get on the phone with you and walk through. One is about trade-offs, and I would say 95% of our functionality works in air gap. There is a couple trade-offs that you make, but you can live with them. The reason I'd like to get on the phone is some of these situations that I've worked with, like U.S. government, our best practice air gap still needs some tweaks for it to work. Like, if you're in military and you need the double air gap solution required by many of the agencies. And so Jordan and I are happy to get on the phone and talk you through those and walk you through our best practice, as well as tweaks you might need for your special situation. And we could talk through all the trade-offs too, if that's okay with the folks asking about air gap. We could spend this whole call on air gap. But yeah, just reach out. We'll do a dedicated call on it. And then the other question was, I don't remember what the other chat question was. I'll come back to it later. Back to the regularly scheduled program, Corey.
All right, thank you. Next one, John Quirk, which was not introduced earlier. John is part of Advanced Insights team. Feel free to take it away, John.
Thank you, Corey. So I've compressed my questions onto a shorter number of slides, so I'll cover off all of the reporting questions that came in. So there was a few people asking for just broad overview of some of our reporting capabilities, so I will run us around some of that in a little demo. A roadmap for Advanced Insights functionality, so I can talk a little bit about that. And DJam's already mentioned the work that we are doing around our Intune offering there. So our ambition is that we will bring the Patch Insights functionality that we have to Intune only customers, and then gradually build out the functionality there. So do you provide reporting or monitoring capabilities? Yes, we do. I'll show you that now. Would like to know more about reporting. Fair enough. Oh yeah, and there was a question here about remediation of the CCM cache folder, which is something that we have on our very soon roadmap. So I don't have anything to show you on that today, but I was interested to see that as a question, because absolutely that's the kind of thing that we want to provide. So I'll just share out my screen here and just take over the session for a moment. So as a quick overview for our reporting offerings, this is Advanced Insights. So anyone who's in our premium SKU, which is our highest licensing tier, has access to this product. So hopefully those of you who have premium or have our Advanced Insights Showcase are familiar with this. This basically is our HTML5 reporting portal for the entire config manager dataset. So this provides very detailed software update reporting in particular. Obviously, that's a big focus for us, but it also has a whole bunch of other capabilities. So someone had asked about reporting against third-party updates specifically. So depending on the requirement that you have, we can filter this this kind of view here. Sorry, they're not called that, but we'll Patch My PC against Patch My PC updates, for example. So if I only want to see details about specific Patch My PC updates, then I can see those in here. You'll be using software update groups for deployments of your updates, and so we'll also show you your compliance state against those. And everything in this portal is always clickable for more information, and you can drill in for more details about anything you might like. So, for example, if I want to see the details about my third-party software updates, then I can see which are the individual updates that are part of this update group, what the individual compliance of those things is, how I'm deploying this. I can get details of the actual deployment state and each individual machine and its status, and all the way through to being able to drill into individual machines and seeing everything that we know from a config manager perspective about that particular device. So this will show me what the update compliance is for this individual machine, when it last scanned, what it scanned against, all of that kind of good stuff. But then along with the software update compliant data, it's also going to show us a whole bunch of other just generic hardware inventory information, some of which already exists in Config Manager and some of which we are building ourselves. So it'll show you the monitor layout and those kinds of things, battery health for the device, disk health for the device if it has an SSD that we can monitor, those kinds of things. So there's very significant detail in this, and we'll have reports in here about all sorts of elements of the config manager environment. So this is content source reporting that shows you where devices are getting their content from, what the impact of different caching and fallback technologies are, and those kinds of things, and a whole host of other reports depending on what it is you're interested in. So if you're doing OS deployment with Config Manager, we have reporting on that. If you wanted to see what your Windows 11 readiness report looked like, then we're going to show you your Windows 11 upgrade readiness and those kinds of things. All of this is available in Advanced Insights, which is part of our premium SKU. For those of you who are not on our premium SKU, we have a lower tier version of Insights, which is called Patch Insights, and this is available basically to everybody else. So if you have Config Manager and you're using Enterprise or Enterprise Patch, then you have access to this as well. You can download the Advanced Insights installer from our download and install page. I'll stick that in chat after this, you just install Advanced Insights in the same way as you would do if you were a premium customer, and it will just render this interface instead. So it's a very similar experience to Advanced Insights. It just is lacking stuff like our inventory extensions, dashboards around the likes of threat analytics and OS deployments and those kinds of things. But it does have a real industry-leading software update reporting function. So even outside of the premium SKU, we want to make sure that we're providing you with the ability to report on what the compliance of your environment is against Microsoft updates and against third-party updates, which are coming from the Advanced Insights catalog. So I don't want to take up too much of more time on this AMA, but if you haven't yet seen Patch Insights, then if you go to the Patch My PC website, you can download Advanced Insights from various different locations on that website and install that, and anyone who's in the any of the other SKUs will automatically get access to this Patch Insights product.
Awesome, thank you.
I think there are some more reporting questions in the deck if you can shove that back up, Corey. Already mentioned reporting. Yes, I've done that. Do you have a roadmap? So yes, we're bringing in Intune bits and pieces. We've done that. Yeah, so the next slide, I think, please, Corey.
Can do.
So scheduled exports is something that comes up quite a lot, and we do talk about this a bit, and I have a task on the dev board for the team for our next sprint to have a look at this basically again. We struggle with this because the Advanced Insights interface is built as a dashboard solution. It's heavily interactive, and so a printout of it isn't actually very useful. For example, we make extensive use of donut charts, which only show you one index. That said, I am interested in the scenario. So if you do have a particular scenario where you can describe what a scheduled report looks like to you, I'm really interested in that. I'm John at patchmypc.com, and I'd be really interested in hearing exactly what you think that should look like. But we struggle to at the moment to work out how we're actually supposed to provide that, but it is something that I'm interested in. There's no way of pulling the data out of Advanced Insights into Power BI because that data is all coming from Config Manager anyway. So if you want to access it, it's already there in SQL basically. So Advanced Insights, this is a question. Can you take a minute to please explain how to get Advanced Insights as part of Patch My PC per node price? So Advanced Insights is part of the premium SKU. So if you're currently on Enterprise Plus, then you would need to upgrade to Enterprise Premium, which comes at an additional $1.50 per seat price. And your account executives will be very happy to hear from you if that was something that you were interested in. We have co-management and using Windows Update for Business for workstations. Can we still use Config Manager for server updates? Can Advanced Insight report UFB update statuses? The short answer to that is yes, a bit. We have a Microsoft Updates dashboard in Advanced Insights. You get your clients via our inventory extensions to scan against Microsoft updates, and they will bring their software update compliance back as part of their hardware inventory schema. This isn't the same thing as software update compliance, but it does at least give you some visibility as to where there are updates that are missing from your servers, which are managed by WFB. When can we expect reporting dashboards to be available out of the box for SCCM and Intune? So the SCCM stuff is available right now. Patch Insights included in all the SKUs and Advanced Insights in Premium. Intune, watch this space. We are working on it. And I think I've got more still to come.
Yep.
Types of reports and how to set up. So the Advanced Insights product you download from our website and you install it. We do still have some SQL reporting services reports, which are still available via our website and are still linked out of the publisher. But we are going to work towards deprecation of those and moving over to the Advanced Insights stack. So that's not really an area that we recommend that people get into today because they're considered significantly legacy. So Advanced Insights is a download and install, and we will provide assistance for you via our support channels if you need help getting it set up. But it is a fairly straightforward install.
And surprise, surprise, I got the Java patches handled.
Sorry, not sorry.
So Java patches are handled just like any other patches. The one note I will make on Java patches is we do split them up by major release. So if you deploy Java 8, it will only update Java 8. We also have something called Java Latest. If you deploy Java Latest, it will find any older versions of Java and update it to the very latest, which today is, I think, 21. That's a quick and easy way. If you always want to be on the latest version of Java, you can push out that latest package. And someone said, how are Oracle Java patches handled? All the Javas are handled the exact same. Oracle Java is a local content product from version 8. 21 is actually not a local content product. So 21 will actually just download from the internet, and it seems to work very well.
Hey, Jordan, before your next question, Ben, are you okay to speak about autopilot integration?
Yeah, sure. So there's a question came up around how maybe best practice for deploying updates to devices and how does that look during autopilot. This is something we see a lot. If you deploy required apps, Win32 apps to devices, and if you're using Patch My PC, we've got how many apps now, Andrew? Over 1,200, 1,300?
14.
We're almost at 1,400.
If you're deploying all 1,400 apps and you were targeting a poor Intune device as it was enrolling into Intune, it maybe takes some time. So we heavily recommend using enrollment status profile page, especially the blocking apps feature, to control which apps are installed during the ESP phase. What the Intune management extension does, it didn't used to. There was a bug, maybe Microsoft fixed it maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago now. Any applications you specify in the blocking apps section in the ESP profile, only those apps will be installed during autopilot. Any other apps targeted to your device as required will be installed after the user logs in. The IME will process them, but it will be delayed. So that's the best way to get the best experience as you're going through autopilot, for sure.
Yeah.
Was there any more to that question, DJ? And was that covered? Do you think?
That was it. And you probably saw that question in chat. So I don't know if there was more questions around autopilot. It is a little bit of an art because you want autopilot to go fast, but the more updates you add, the slower it's going to take. And unfortunately, without sophisticated ordering, we're kind of up to the Intune architecture that can just take its time on that. So it's kind of an art to put like the most important stuff in autopilot and then have the rest come in after. And unfortunately, it's not. It feels a little more like the right human touch than a technology that just works. It's something that we're thinking about how we could do better, but we are really kind of limited here in what we can do during autopilot by Intune capabilities.
But the one thing that is interesting as well, just to add on to this, because it might interest some people watching, we do get requests from time to time where people are asking us, can I deploy these apps only during autopilot? So can I target an app to a device? It can only install during autopilot. Don't install it outside of autopilot. You know, maybe they have a testing phase in production where they want to delay the app to be rolled out, but they're okay with it being installed during the ESP phase. And that's interesting. So we don't have a solution for that today, but there are ways where you can modify the requirement script to spot if the device is actually in enrollment state. So that's interesting. Nothing on the roadmap, but it's interesting to us. So I'm curious how many people actually would be interested to see something like that. A show of hands, and then we'll get it coded this afternoon.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Corey.
Jordan, or if
Awesome.
anything else, DJ, before we dive back in?
No, I think that's good. Actually,
Thank you.
Jordan, did you see the question about Log4j?
Yeah. So Log4j is kind of an interesting one in terms of like how different components of open source software work inside of a chain. So a lot of this comes down to how applications and how vendors package vulnerabilities inside of things. So from a perspective of like how we deal with it, when an application chooses to use, and Andrew actually spoke to this a little bit earlier on with like GhostScript and stuff like that. When an application builds a dependency inside of the application itself, the vulnerability and tracking that vulnerability becomes hard. For example, Log4j is kind of unique in terms of like how it was added, because even detecting the specific version for it required you to do hash level searches because there was no installed product. It's an actual DLL level vulnerability. So how we solve this and how vendors can solve and hunt for this is challenging, because you actually have to more or less build some type of a detection story on how to detect and how to find and figure out if that vulnerability exists. Now, our plan and some of the ideas that we have around some of the things around this and like what we can do today for things like Log4j is we do try to attach CVEs to all of the updates that we release inside of the catalog. If you are using Config Manager and WSUS today, you can, in theory, go through and search for the CVE from 2023 23393, I think is what it was, for that, and you can actually find that vulnerability. And anywhere that we've become aware that that vulnerability for Log4j is associated to a patch for something in our catalog, you could then search for that and ensure that vulnerability gets patched and remediated. In terms of future planning, we have some interesting stuff, and DJM did kind of allude to some of this earlier on, so I will sneak a little bit here. We've got some long-term thoughts about how can we tell better stories around what we want to do with this from a notification perspective when vulnerabilities like this come out, as well as how do we better research it and provide an easier way for you to figure out, I have this vulnerability, what applications are vulnerable in my environment because it's shipped as part of 10 other apps or 20 other apps along the way. And maybe those vendors don't even know about it yet, or maybe they do. And how do we track and continue to build that? You think that kind of covers everything there, DJM, around that?
Yeah.
Other questions or follow-up, I guess, too?
Yeah, one thing is, like Log4j happened when I was still at Microsoft, and Microsoft itself didn't have good scan capabilities, because really what we're talking about is open source code that gets included in other code and then built. So the ability to even scan for Log4j is super problematic. Because really what we're looking for is certain binaries that we know have vulnerabilities. So during Log4j is kind of up to the vendors to publish the vulnerability that they were including a vulnerable version of Log4j. And then now Patch My PC can be like, okay, yeah, this application is vulnerable and here's the update for it. There needs to be better technology around vulnerabilities in open source that gets included by vendors and then compiled and then shipped. But yeah, so that's a little tricky, is what I say. It's really still up to the vendor to manage their vulnerability list and their versions, and then what we do is publish it. You know, we're kind of not in the business of finding the vulnerabilities in Google Chrome before they can, and then announcing it. Not yet. So.
And it's interesting. And it's like one of the things I know Andrew and I, sorry, Andrew, I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit here, have chatted a little bit about, right? Is like in the future from an application catalog, because one of the things we get asked all the time, right, is, well, do you include any open source? Does your product have any open source inside of it, right? That we want to know about from a compliance perspective. I don't know, Andrew, we've talked a little bit about this. Is like, what does it even look like if we were to try and take 1,400 apps in our catalog, right? Like, what's the compliance value or like customer value add? If we were to take that list of 1,400 apps and we were to try and add OSS as they update or add new features to it, because we already are reading release notes. And I guess I'd be curious. I don't know, Andrew, what your thoughts. I'd be curious if something like that would be interesting, and I'd love to get people's feedback on that, because it is something we've talked about, right? Of like, even if we don't have a technology solution around it, like, is there an administrative and compliance solution that even if we don't have a fix right away or nobody has a fix for it, can we help you make the determination of it as people announce that, hey, we have this dependency for it? But I don't know. I did include an article in there too, by the way. I just threw a link in there. I did write a blog post back a while back for Log4j as an example around it of what the technical work looks like to try to even figure out if it is present in your environment or is, has an impact in your environment. As far as malicious code injection from a compromised vendor, we do have a couple of things that we do here. So there's a couple of things that I wanna highlight here. So first things first, every single binary that we bring in from a testing perspective as part of that test process that we talked about earlier gets uploaded into VirusTotal and gets run through scans. We include a copy of that report, and we look historically at those VirusTotal reports whenever we are submitting things to say, hey, did this have a higher number of things? Did it have 0? Does it previously normally have 1? Does it previously have 1 or 2 along the way? And what exactly, like, does this look like, or how does this look behind the scenes? So we do some checking from a perspective of hardware from that. We also do some other spot checks along the way. A good example of this is actually Google Earth. We had a issue with Google Earth where Google Earth releases a build periodically and their signing certificate actually expired, and we refused to release the new update for Google Earth. I think it was for a month and a half, and we badgered their support because they had just released unsigned binaries. And we weren't sure, we couldn't validate it. So we stopped releasing the updates to it until we actually got into contact with them. And then we were finally able to actually get them to re-sign and republish it along the way and reship the update. So we do some pretty in-depth attempts at analysis. We don't have like a reverse engineering where we're trying to like pull apart every single one of the 1,400 apps and do reverse engineering and look through from it. But we do have a set of heuristics that we kind of look at along the way from a, how is this trending from previous scans in VirusTotal? How does it have anything that's new? Was it previously signed and now it's not signed? Was it previously signed by this type of a certificate and now it's being signed by this type of a certificate? That we do along the way, as well as smoke screen testing, or purple smoke testing, as I like to call it, where we actually do an install of the application and then let it run in a box for a moment to see, like, does it do weird things now? And we're consistently looking for new ways to improve this going along forward, and we'll be continuing to add more and more testing to this as we're going through and shipping updates and apps. I'm done.
Popular Andrew.
Can you explain how the new custom app feature works? How is it better than just making an app in CM directly? So the new, actually, I think I'll show this. I'll make a really quick app if I can. Give me one moment to log in. Last time I did this, I shared my password, so I'm gonna log in first and then I'll share my screen.
Was it your 7-zip password?
Stairs insecurity.
Actually, I don't need to log in. All right, so here is the custom apps portal. You can see here, I've got a few apps. The last app I did that was actually pretty good, was a good example, was the config manager, like support center. So program files, Microsoft configuration manager, where are you? I'm totally not prepared for this at all, as you can see. Tools. So we've got Support Center for Configuration Manager. It's an MSI. One thing that's really cool about this that's much, much easier than building an app for Config Manager is we'll do a lot of the detection method stuff for you automatically. So if I go and just upload this MSI, it will actually rip apart the MSI and fill out a lot of stuff for you. So you get the app name filled out. You have to provide a description and an app icon still. But if you go to this configuration tab, this is how we do detection. And so you can see here, because it's an MSI, we were able to fill out the silent install. We were able to grab the version number directly from the MSI. We were able to grab the apps and features name directly from the MSI, and it uses all this stuff for detection. I think we also even pulled the language from it. So it was able to figure out all this stuff. So it's really as difficult as getting an icon, which hopefully that's an icon. No, it's an SVG. I don't want an SVG. I want a. Why is everything in SVG? Of course, I need an icon. Thanks, Jake. You know what? Just give me a picture. Config images. There we go. This is it. JPEG. So now we've got an icon. We've got everything filled out. And the hardest part in making that custom app was giving it an icon, and it's ready to go. So from there, it goes into the publisher. You check the box. That's the part where I need to log in, and I'm not going to do that right now. But you check the box, run sync, and then you've got an app just like you would in Patch My PC. So especially for the MSIs, it's really easy. For EXEs, you'll have to fill those boxes out because we can't rip apart an EXE and figure out where things are. And so that part's very simple. Someone asked, can you configure new app defaults like MSI logging within the custom apps workflow? You can put that in the workflow, or you can use the publisher to do that, because we still have all of our right-click options. So it's a really easy way. Also, if you want to utilize our right-click options like conflict processes and stuff like that, it's an easy way to utilize our wrapper for your software installs. And feel free to pop up the thing. I should mention, we are planning, I think our next webinar, DJM, is going to be all custom apps.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so yeah, I could spend a lot of time on custom apps, but our next webinar will be entirely focused on custom apps.
Yeah, that's the last week in February. I'm 99.9% certain we'll be done and shipped and in GA by the time we do that webinar. And so then Andrew and other folks will walk through all the glorious details of custom apps.
Awesome.
Back to Jordan.
Let's talk about Windows Server 2012 R2. So today we don't have any patches for this. We won't have any patches for this. Just to kind of cover over this, we do have, if you're not currently aware, we actually, I think, talked about this a little bit recently, a webinar that we do once a month called the Patch Tuesday Support Group, to talk a little bit about these. Now, what I do know is that at this point in time, 2012 R2 is end of life. There is still extended support contracting, it looks like. I don't know when the end date is on that. I haven't been able to find the date on when that is, but at this point, there is no more patching for 2012 R2 at this point. The Patch Tuesday webinar, in regards to the Patch Tuesday webinar, basically it is done, I think did we decide on every Thursday or every Friday after Patch Tuesday, Brian? I don't remember. I think it was Friday. We will put that on the website, and I will get a link to the sign-up sheet for it in the chat here in a little bit. But yeah, the unfortunate, fortunate or otherwise, is there are no more patches for 2012 R2 unless you are going to pay for the extended support at this point in time. So the answer is to move away from 2012 R2 at this point. And actually, you really want to move away from this because effective as I believe the 2403 build of Config Manager, I think. You will not be able to continue your current branch upgrades in Config Manager anymore until you upgrade off of 2012 R2. So just something to start thinking about, that if you are staying current on current branch for it, it'll need to move forward. You can move them to Azure except for your Config Manager server, because Config Manager still won't update if you move it to Azure for 2012 R2. And Jake has kindly provided the link to the webinars for future, and then the new one is there. You can sign up for that one. Yep.
Go ahead. Jordan, you have the next one as well.
Me, more talking. Is there a way to get a consolidated view of the status of installations on machines within Patch My PC? So there are a couple of different ways to go about this. And when we were kind of reading this question, we weren't 100% sure for how this was going to be answered. So the first way to know is that if you go into the Patch My PC publisher, there is an option under the options panel to configure what's called automatic publishing. In that option to configure the automatic publishing of updates, it can query the Config Manager database and tell you what updates or what applications you currently have in your environment that we can support via Patch My PC. So that is one of the ways that you can get an idea of this. That new, actually, I don't remember when we added it, but it is new if you've had Patch My PC for more than a year, let's say. It's within the past year. We have added the ability to get a count there from that view, as well as to see the specific machines that we were able to count those on. However, that's not necessarily a terribly friendly way to get that information, as it requires you to, one, have access to go log into the publisher, go in and get it, and of course you have to have the access in order to do that. John, did you have anything to add about ways, the consolidated ways that people can get an idea of what things are installed and the status of those installations outside of the publisher?
Advanced Insights and the Patch Insights provide a good kind of interactive and intuitive view of that data set as well. So when it comes to tracking either compliance or deployment status or just general installation status across the application and the update estate, then that area is and has been for a great many years now a big focus for us around Advanced Insights, and to a great extent, and Patch Insights to a slightly lesser extent.
All right. Take it away, Jordan.
Sorry, answering another question. Does Patch My PC offer Intune training or recommend specific training for software distribution and computer imaging? So at this point in time, we don't offer any training. We do try to do some public-facing content for how to do different things. We also have a rather extensive library of YouTube videos that are available out there on our YouTube website. I would, however, be curious. If you want to, again, I'm going to confess my email address is jordan@patchmypc.com. I'd love to get an idea of the type of training content that you would like to see in the future. We have some interesting ideas and aspirations on this, specifically because of the fact that we think that helping to provide some information around this will just help our customers utilize our product better. So it's a win-win for us if we take that knowledge that we have and try and make it even more available. But we want to make sure that it's content that people, one, want, and two, would be useful in this particular space and is digestible in this space. So if you have specific things in that area, I'd love to hear about it. I can absolutely, Jake has recommended or suggested and posted the Intune training YouTube videos out there. There's a massive amount of content out there. We do have a bunch of MVPs on our team. I'll do a shameless plug for them. Most of them, Ben Whitmore, Ben Reader, and various others, Brian. All of us have different content that's available that is informational on our website. There's also a bunch of online learning platforms and programs out there from some other people that have created content out there that's really good in general. One other resource I will mention is the learn.microsoft.com stuff has gotten significantly better in recent months in terms of how they have set up information for training as well as for sandboxing. And the best way to learn a lot of the Intune stuff, in my opinion, still at this point, is just go try it. And if you're going, but I can't try it, it's production. The easiest way to do that is there is a free developer subscription that you can go out and you can sign up for. If you go out there and you sign up for it, you will get a full production tenant of like 25 Microsoft E5 licenses that you can set up. You can use that to then practice deploying software to a machine. You can practice conditional access policies. You can practice MFA and do all of the different things like that. And that way you can actually get a chance to be fortunate enough to have a lab instead of just an environment that is a lab that also happens to be production.
And you're done.
Oh, goody. So this question, new Teams MSIX deployment through PatchMyPC. The PatchMyPC publisher today does not support MSIX. Part of the reason for that is we use the catalog itself is still an SDP catalog. The same catalog that, like, if you use System Center Update Publisher would generate. System Center Update Publisher does not support MSIX apps. We are working on, and this is kind of like our part of our big build into the SaaS foray. As we build our catalog into SaaS, we're going to build in MSIX functionality. So as we get into the cloud, we'll be able to support MSIX in the future. So eventually, we are working on it.
Jordan, you're up.
I'm being transitioned to a temp SCCM role while we look for a new candidate for our company. What are the core things I should focus on within SCCM? So a couple of things. I like that this kind of speaks to the earlier question earlier on in regards to training. Config Manager is this interesting, wonderful thing that you can spend 10 years on learning, and you'll turn around tomorrow and go, oh, I didn't know that that's how that worked, or oh, I didn't know that was this the weird thing to do it. In terms of things that you should focus on, I always recommend that people kind of focus on the basics first, which is learning to read log files. The number one skill for a config manager admin is learning how to read log files. CM Trace is the number one tool, and I don't care, they can take it away as much as they possibly want to. Is the number one tool for reading logs out there. Learning how CM Trace works, figuring out how to read the logs, getting an idea of where those logs work and what they do. There's a couple of different ones on there. I think there is one on, somebody already linked it, the learn from Microsoft on what all the different logs are for Config Manager on it. For it is the thing to focus on figuring out. If you can figure out logs and then you can search for error messages that are in the logs, somebody somewhere has written something on how to fix the problem that you are running into. The other thing that I would say to pay extra careful attention to, because it perpetually gets forgotten about, is maintenance in WSUS. I cry every time. Everybody gets told at some point in their career is, hey, we just installed WSUS and we don't touch it anymore because Config Manager zombifies it and we should just not look at it. And that's how you end up finding out that your telemetry, when you added a new feature to help clean up third-party software orphaned content, that you had somebody that had 3 terabytes of content get cleaned up because they had 3 terabytes of orphaned WSUS content. And we were like, oh man, that's terrifying. And no, it really was 3 terabytes of storage that they got back. So learning how WSUS works, learning how Active Directory works. So much of Config Manager is focused on the other technologies that it lives on top of. And it needs to kind of be looked at as a whole from an infrastructure perspective. But WSUS, I would say, is the number one thing that breaks for people. IIS is another thing to kind of look at as well. Just kind of getting a basic understanding of what it looks like as well. Building apps, you'll find tons of guides out there. There's tons of documents out there. There's tons of tools out there to make it easy at this point. It's kind of it's a relatively good solve. Then we'll also put in here, there's a fantastic tool to get kind of a good idea of like how things are configured and the ACW is optimally configured for getting an idea of that along the way. Honestly, there are some different training companies out that have done different training things like that. You can absolutely go and look at them. I would say that there hasn't been a Microsoft certificate, a true certificate of Config Manager in forever. So there really isn't a good thing from that perspective. But logs would be the big thing, looking at WSUS and trying to understand how WSUS works. And then getting an idea of where do I go to look at my components and figuring out why it looks like a Christmas tree. If you haven't looked at that before, there's a big Christmas tree component in monitoring of all the different components in Config Manager. Diving into that, reading it, understanding how it flip-flops around and why it's flip-flopping around will start to give you an idea of what it looks like. The other thing I will say is if you haven't been to before, this is a shameless plug for another conference and event here. If you've never been to heard of MMS MOA, look at it, consider going to it. You will find tons of people there and tons of resources. I won't say that it's almost better than training or dedicated training, but if you want to find other people out there who are going through the same problems you are, who are going through the same problem of help, I have now been shoved into a config manager admin role and I have no idea what this is. Congratulations, there's millions of people just like you. I myself am one of those people. I never knew what config manager was at the time. And they were like, hey, you want to be the new config manager admin? And I was like, sure, I'd like to be a new config manager admin, I guess. And they said, great, here's the previous dude's notes who used to run it. Figure out how to upgrade all of our Windows XP machines to Windows 7 machines in the next 4 months. And I went, okay. And that was how I learned to use config manager. But yeah, if you have questions about it, reach out. I'm happy to answer kind of more in detail and give kind of more specific to your scenario of what training or other ideas might be along the way. I'll stop rambling now.
Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Jordan. DJam, you're up.
Let's see. I'm based in Australia, so might not make it. We're looking to implement application control using WDAC in our Intune managed environment. And I have been told Patch PC for managing updates in Intune will break WDAC. Is this new to you? So WDAC is a complex technology depending on how you intend to roll it out. If you want to block everything except what's allowed, there's different ways that you could approach it. You could set up trusted installers. Config Manager Intune can operate like this, but oftentimes, because of the extensibility with Patch My PC, where you could do your own scripts for pre and post, those might not execute as trusted, and that's cases where it can break. And this was mentioned in chat a little bit, we took over stewardship for the PowerShell App Deploy toolkit, and we also were looking at WDAC as a possibility there, but the signing requirements are really hard to work in an open source model. So this is a long way of saying WDAC's on our radar. It's a hard technology. We are looking for a turnkey solution that could work. We don't have one yet. There are people in the community that are really good at this. If you want a reference, email me at djam@patchmypc, and we'll hook you up with people that can get this working in your environment, because it's complex to set up until we come up with a better solution right now. But yeah, we do know that Patch My PC doesn't always work with WDAC because of the extensibility that we have and our ability to run PowerShell, and that breaks in WDAC. Right, Corey.
All right, Andrew. Thank you, DJam.
And I've actually answered this question in chat already, but if you add custom install switches to an installation package, are those retained when the new packages are automatically added? So future versions install with these custom switches too? Yes. So if you use the right-click option in the Patch My PC publisher to add installation switches, those switches will be retained for all future versions. So any new version will automatically get the new switch. The same thing goes for any of the right-click options, except for like republish. So pre-post scripts, those are maintained. MST files, those are maintained. Anything like that is all retained throughout all the versions. So you should only have to set it once and then just let it do its thing. Next.
Yeah, really fast. And
Andrew.
Ben mentioned on the WDAC question I just answered, we are writing a blog about the best practices of getting it working with Patch My PC. And like he said in chat, it mostly works. And there's some cases that we'll document where it's kind of hard. Thanks, Ben.
All right. So we got 3 questions that were very, very similar. If there's a 0 day on a specific app, must it manually be triggered, or is there a way to get it triggered as soon as you guys are done packaging it? How many days will the patch be available for critical security updates? And what's the quickest way to sync updates for a 0 day? So the quickest way, if you really, really want 0 days as soon as they come out, you can set the Patch My PC publisher to sync every 4 hours. There's no there's no way to trigger the publisher to think on like when we release the catalog, though I've thought of some ways to do it. I think the ability to do this might actually be something possible once we have SaaS, because we should be able to like fire up a webhook in SaaS and tell the publisher to do something. I've thought about that idea for the future. Like if we have specific 0 days, go ahead and think immediately. For the question with how many days will the patch be available for critical security updates, we usually have things out the same day. I'll say within 24 hours, we have things out typically. There's a lot of websites we have to watch. Sometimes things fall through the cracks, but usually we have things out within 24 hours, especially if there's the critical security updates. A lot of times we hear them from customers and say, oh, we need to patch this. And we'll say, oh, we're already working on it, or we'll look into it immediately once a customer comes and asks us about it. I think that's good. We can go next.
Yeah, and I will add too, more aspirational. What Jordan and I were talking about before, this thing that internally we could name Ghost Will, is exactly going to play in this space, which is not all updates are equal in urgency or severity, and being able to give you more automatic deployment control over severity level of updates so that things flow to your environment faster if they're 0 day. That's something that we're going to build into our products. We don't have it yet, but we're going to give what those 3 questions kind of implied. We're going to build that in.
Thank you. Jordan, you are next.
So when does Microsoft plan to roll out a patch for KB 503.441? So this is another shameless plug for, hey, you should totally come and suffer. I mean, sit around and chat with us at the Patch Tuesday support group. Brian and I actually did a very, very long conversation specifically around not just KB 503.441, but the other KBs as well that are specifically tied to this. For those of you who don't know, this is basically where the most recent patch, there was a vulnerability in the recovery sector of Windows. And in order to fix that, you had to patch the recovery sector for Windows. The problem is that if you try and apply that patch and your recovery section is itty bitty teeny tiny small, it won't install, and it doesn't install badly. It just like blows up in your face and doesn't give you a good reason why, and it's super confusing and annoying and makes all of your reporting and compliance look really bad for the month. And so the only way to really kind of deal with this is, one, get rid of the recovery partition, which I don't know that I necessarily recommend that. And I believe they've now updated the metadata on the patch so that it doesn't show up for it anymore. If it is removed, and it then becomes no longer a vulnerability. Or 2 is resize it, which is incredibly, incredibly painful because it is a scriptable process. You do have to script it. I believe there is now a supported Microsoft solution for this, for a PowerShell script that adjusts the size of it with where it lives at the end of the disk. Anyways, go watch that. We deep dive into a whole bunch of it. It's like an hour-long video of me and Brian yelling. I mean, constructively providing feedback to each other about that particular update, as well as footage and feedback from other people in the community on how to resolve that for the different scenarios around it.
Thank you. And while you're on mic,
I just want to tag on to the last one for a hot second, just to provide some clarity. Like Microsoft hasn't, the question is, when will they release patches? They sort of did, right? Like that. Like they sort of did, but they didn't make it to WSUS. Therefore, they're not available to config manager orgs yet either. They released it within to Windows Update. So, like if you're using Windows Update for Business or you're using Intune, like you might see those updates. But there was a lot of confusion there, especially because the KB article initially said yes, they did publish it to WSUS. I'm like, oh, where are they? They aren't there yet. So. So there's 2 levels of freakouts there. One is like, okay, we actually want to install, this. We have this patch and it's failing on our devices. And then there's the other one of, well, how do I get this patch because I'm worried about the vulnerability? And the answer is we don't actually know when Microsoft will release those patches to WSUS, or if they ever will. To be honest. Back to you, Jordan.
Okay. Are you going to be looking at adding the ability to patch Mac software via Intune going forward, as Intune is more than capable of patching Mac software? So I think TJ spoke a little bit about this earlier, and the only thing that I'll say is the way that we started doing Intune stuff is that while we internally started managing our devices using Intune, And people keep asking us internally to use Macs. That's it. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, we're looking at it.
Some point we got to solve it because I got a Mac now. I don't know.
DJM and Dan.
Yeah, so PS80T. So, last quarter when we announced this at MMS Miami, Patch My PC took over the stewardship of PowerShell App Deploy toolkit, and we had one of the founders, creators, even joined us full time here at Patch My PC in Dan Cunningham. So we have, I'm going to give some high level, and then I'll talk about the question. We have a roadmap for 2024, which includes things like publishing a new version of PS80T 4.0, which will fix a bunch of the issues that are kind of, for example, VB, removing VB so we get better Windows 11 support, fixing and standardizing some of the PowerShell best practices, so it's more in line with PowerShell. So we actually have a webinar in March that we're going to go through in detail of some of the things we're doing with PS80T. So as far as the PS80T schedule, I wonder if we can get a time to scheduler on PS80 prompt so that they can choose a time for the install. The problem with this is it is a function of the installation technology you're using, right? PS80T is just an installation script that wraps an installation itself, and almost always the scheduling of when it's going to happen is a function of, if you're deploying with Configman or you're deploying with Intune, they decide when it happens. You can't do it inline on it because it would require PS80T to have an agent or to hold the installation open if they were to defer 2 to 3 hours, which would block Intune or Configman from doing anything else during that time. And actually it will time out and either of those will just kill it. So this isn't something that could be native in PS80T. It has to be function of the management technology that's calling the installation that PS80T is wrapped. But I would encourage you to submit any ideas like this into our ideas portal. We have a section now for PS80T. There's also ideas that could be submitted in PS80T being open source, just on where we store our source. There's ideas there too, but submit ideas there and we triage them every month and look at prioritizing improvements and work. Yeah, right. But
Thank you.
Again, I will plug our webinar in March that we will have that's going to be 100% focused on PS80T.
Jordan.
Is it possible to block app installation through Patch My PC? So I'd be curious to know. This is another one of those email me, because I'd be curious to know what exactly you're looking for out of this. I know Andrew talked, I think, a little bit earlier on in regards to around what this looks like from like checking a checkbox or anything like that. And I'd be curious to know, and I may follow up to this person, but I'd be curious to know from people, are you looking for an ability to block like on the client side or to block on the publisher side? Like, I want RBAC and I want to prevent certain types of users from making app selection choices, or are we looking for, we want to block on the client side? I'd be curious to know kind of more about that. On the client side, it's an interesting challenge because solving on the client side is looking at things like WDAC and is looking at things like the current implementation of AppGuard and things like that. But I'd be curious to know more about like what you would look specifically on that side of things, because and what that would look like to you. So,
just some quick maybe details here on this, maybe Jordan. On the demos, when I talk about the uninstall part for Intune, yeah, I get asked this like quite often, like if it's possible for us to block rather than just uninstall. So I'm guessing it would be client side for most people,
okay.
I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious. It used to be called, I think, Application Guard, Jake. I think that's still its on-prem implementation name. And I think its cloud implementation name, I think, is WDAC.
All right. Next one, Jordan.
Good. Can you explain the update approval process in Patch My PC? I think we did this one already, but just to recap, we have a full-blown website URL out here that goes through the entire process. Did we do this one already? Am I hallucinating? I feel like we did. We answered this one already. Does anybody remember?
Let's go next. I think we did this one.
I think we did this one already.
Okay. Then Adam or Andrew.
Yeah, Adam had to drop, so I'll answer his questions. If Leview's on, Levieu can answer this as well. Will there ever be support for a CrowdStrike installer? The CrowdStrike installer has been a very popular one, a very popular request. We've tried to work with CrowdStrike multiple times. We've tried to purchase the software so that we could get the installer, and they said go to the partner portal. We talked to the partner portal and haven't heard back. So we're going to try again just because we've been asked again by customers. And maybe we'll try to work with someone's TAM and get it that way. But it seems possible, but we don't have the ability at the moment because we can't get the installer. And I know that's an installer that updates all the time.
And a quick note here, if anyone has contacts at CrowdStrike, maybe just raise it with them to increase the pressure on CrowdStrike to give us access to their installer.
Next. And I can answer this one as well, since Adam had to step away. How can I deploy apps with dependency/installation order in Intune as with application groups and config manager? So there is an option in Intune under the options button at the top. You can choose to keep dependencies. So basically check that box and then go into your Patch My PC created Intune app, add those dependencies. Whenever we update the app, we'll actually move those dependencies over with the new when the new version is created.
We're wrapping up here. Next one, John, unless this one was covered earlier.
Yes, we've covered that.
Okay. And 3 more from Adam.
Anyone want to step in for Adam?
I volunteer as tribute. Is it possible to deploy new application updates to a test group? And for example, after 1 week, the rest of users' devices, does Patch My PC have a way to identify patches updates for it? Okay, I'll start with the first one and then I'll go through because it looks like these are related, but not all the same. The first one here, you absolutely can do this. You can create deployment rings inside of it. It just depends on how you want to create it. Natively inside of our product, it depends on whether you're using Intune or whether you're using Config Manager. If you are using Intune, you can programmatically create rings that would assign a early ring and then a broader along the way as you go. Inside of Config Manager, it gets a little bit trickier. You can go along through and you would basically what you would do is you would create the assignments ahead of time and how they are scheduled and ordered. And then if the application gets updated in place, and you could also leverage maintenance windows behind the scenes for that. Does Patch My PC have a way to identify patches, updates rated as critical and deploy them on a faster cadence than other patches and updates? So internally, in terms of this, we do have a way of identifying them, but we typically always release based on our catalog release cycle. Again, that's 2 to 3 times a day. However, if you are using the, I'm trying to remember the license SKU. I don't remember which license SKU it is called now, but we do have a functionality in Intune. Sorry, what was that?
Enterprise Plus. If
is
you're
Enterprise
thinking
Plus
about
now?
dynamic assignments.
Yeah, I'm talking about dynamic assignments. I couldn't remember what the name was for it off the top of my head at the moment. So in Enterprise Plus, dynamic assignments does allow you to use a feature to create what we call dynamic assignments, where you can choose a specific grade of the patch requirements and then create rings off the top of that for Intune. As far as Config Manager goes, you absolutely can do this via ADR. However, you do have to do some kind of like one-off bits and pieces along the way for it. Oh no, the third one.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. I don't remember what the third question was. But yeah, so anyways, you can absolutely control it via Config Manager. Config Manager has some interesting caveats for this. They only allow you to use, I think, what are called classifications for it, but you can generate your own custom classifications and then leverage those inside of the ADR if you want to generate custom classifications for things that are along the way. I do believe it does have severity, but it just depends on what the severity setting is for those updates along the way for it.
Okay.
I think
So
this is
last question.
This one was really vague.
Yeah, so this is tell me more about your Intune or Config integration, and really, this is basically the full-time what we're doing every day, all day. So we have demo calls that can be scheduled at your convenience off our website. They're an hour long, and an engineer will get on the phone and walk you through the flow of what either of these integrations look like. And it's free flow. You could answer or ask any questions while you go. So that's the best way to understand our integration is just go to our website and schedule a free demo. No strings attached. We'll just walk you through it and answer your questions. And if you need 2 demos, we didn't cover it all, you can schedule a second one and do that. But high level, what we do, we attach to Configman or to Intune. We have 1,400 apps in our catalog. You can pick those apps to be added to Configman or Intune to be installed as base installs from Software Center or Company Portal, or you can configure updates for those apps, and then we will release metadata to make sure you're on the latest version. Or you can do both of those. So that's high level what we do. But to understand the beautiful, awesome details, just schedule a demo with us, and we'll spend an hour walking you through this as well as any questions. And then I think we are kind of wrapping up. We got to the end of the slides. The slides contained all of our kind of posted questions that we went through. It looks like we tried to keep up in chat. Last call for any of the presenters on the phone. Anything else we want to add or cover, maybe that came to mind or you guys saw? Silence.
There's one that just came in. Is there a general time frame for updated versions of applications to be released in the Patch by PC? Generally, 11 to noon Mountain Time is the first release, and then we usually have a second release around 2 to 3 p.m. If there's a Google Chrome release, usually that ends up being a little bit after 5 p.m. So we'll usually have Google Chrome out after 6. If we know Google Chrome is coming out, we'll hold the second release until after Google releases their update at 5 or 6. They like to ship it off at 5 p.m. and I assume leave the office.
Awesome. It's a great last question. Thanks, Andrew. Corey, did you want to talk about any of our upcoming webinars?
Well, we definitely have, Jordan mentioned it a few times. We have the Patch Tuesday Support Group webinar, which is the Thursday after Patch Tuesday itself, where we have Jordan and Brian, as well as generally we have a guest. Either it can be someone within the community or talking about potentially a feature or something, a neat little demo we might have for Patch My PC. But in February, we also have the, and correct me if I'm wrong, the custom apps webinar. And I think that's, what's the last one at the end of February? I forget.
February. In March, I believe, John, we're doing an Advanced Insights webinar. I don't know if we
are indeed Patch Insights and Advanced Insights, yes.
I'm sorry, Patch Insights, Advanced Insights. And we're also doing a PowerShell app deployment toolkit webinar. So 3 webinars for us in March. You guys are going to be too overwhelmed with webinars. We're probably going to have to cut back. But lots of good content coming up. And thanks for all your participation and questions. And it looks like we filled the time and we got to the questions. So thanks, everybody.